Welcome back guys, hope you're all doing great. And today's in this video I'm gonna show you how to create a full stack resume builder web app completely by yourself by using the ReactJS and the Google Firebase, Tailwind CSS and the React query client for the state management library. Well, even if you haven't used any of this technology before, don't worry guys, I got your back. We're going to build this project completely from the ground, and we are going to discuss every single aspect of this technology, and we are going to use the chat GPT to help us whenever you're stuck in somewhere, and to handle the errors and handle the logics and everything. Well, let me show you what exactly that we are going to discuss in this course, right? So you can see here we have this nice UI where you can see the authentication screen and as well as the home screen once the user successfully logged in. So basically we are using the Google Firebase authentications like the Google authentication provider and as well as the GitHub authentication provider. Both of these authentication provider are managed by the Firebase authentications. It helps us to manage the sessions and to manage the JWT tokens provided by the Firebase. So these kinds of stuff are basically handled by the Firebase authentication. So once we successfully logged in, so this is what the user will see, right? You can see the different types of templates and the user can able to mark it as a favorites. And for instance, right now, this is not marked as a favorite. If I wish to add it to my favorites, I can just click it. So that will be instantly added. And you can see it will be changed over here. So these kinds of stuffs are managed by using the React State library management. So once you any changes in that particular data, it will reflect in every single components, every single child nodes, and you can the notification. So we have the custom toast alert notification, which is completely built by using the Toastify package with the help of the Toastify package, right? And as of course we do have this search filtration options also. For instance, if I search for software with the profession called software, so you can see we have it's filtering the entire data and displaying over here. And once I cleared it back, it will be brings back the data instantly. So the basically this animation stuff is completely built by using the framer motion. So I'm going to show you how to use the framer motion to create a nice interactive animations with React.js. All right, and this is also the filtering option, so you can able to choose any kind of this available professions or tags which is available over here. For instance, if I choose front-end developer, so that will brings back the data. And if I choose UI and UX developer, still this tag is also mentioned over here. And for instance, let's say marketing manager, you can see it's showing the different style. And if I choose teacher or educator, no data. So basically we need to customize this no data, but right now I'm just simply displaying it as no data form. Once I cleared it, that will brings back the entire data stuff. Now if I click this, so that will takes us this, so the user can able to completely view the entire preview of that particular template, and he can able to add to his collection or remove from his collection and as well as the favorites. And you can see how many of the people overall like this templates, right? And you can see the similar templates over here. For instance, let's say if I wish to edit this, all I have to do is to click edit, and I can able to start editing just by enabling this edit option. I can completely customize this entire stuff. If you not enable this, you can't do anything at all. Just you have to do is to click edit, then you can start customizing the field over here. And even if I wish to add one more field, I can able to add over here. And if I wish to add another skill set, I can just simply add that skill set, and I can customize the skill name and the skill percentage and everything. So if I wish to delete this, I can simply delete it. And if I wish to update, for instance, let's say I can change it to 90, you can see the entire animation of this progress, right? So once you finish editing, all you have to do is to click save. So basically it's taking somehow like a millisecond, like a few seconds to save the data into your Firebase cloud. And now we can see that alert notification it's successfully saved. And if you wish to edit this image also, all we have to do is to click this image. So you can choose any image from the local, then it will push it to the cloud, then it will get the download URL, and that URL will be displayed over here. And as well as the same time, the data will also update it in your Firebase. So you don't have to worry about once for unfortunately if you're deleting, if you're close this browser, or if you're you saved it and you want to open it again after some times and you wish to edit something, all you have to do is to just go ahead and open that particular template, whatever you edited from your account, so that you can start editing back, right? So even if I refresh this, the changes, whatever I made, it's permanently saved in the cloud. So I don't have to worry about it that I lost my data, right? So I can able to download this into any kind of format like PDF or PNG or JPG or SVG. All you have to do is to just click it. So that will start downloading that specific format, just like here. See, this is the PDF which we downloaded. So this will allows the user to download in any kind of format that you wish to. So let's say if I go to my accounts, so I can see the collections. What are the templates which I added in my collections, right? So if you want to remove it from your collections, all you have to do is to just over here. So right now it's showing added to the collection. So let's say if I want to remove this, just I have to click it back. So that particular template will be removed from your collections, right? So the data also is instantly updated. And you can see my resume. This is the resume which I edit. So the most beautiful part of this resume is, for instance, we can see if I get back to this template and if I'm changing my name one more time, right? Sample, right? So I updated this data. So whatever the updates I made here, that will capture this dynamic image and it will display it over there. See here. If I click save, the data it's getting saved, right? It's getting saved. Now, if I get back to my account and if I get back to my music, and here we go, you can see that changes over here, sample, right? If I get back over here and if I click edit and if I delete this and if I save this, so the changes will be saved to the cloud. And if I get back to my accounts and my resumes, and there we go. So that's the beauty of having the dynamic capturing images and storing it in the Firebase cloud, and we are displaying it over here. So this I worked a ton of hours into this project to bring a realistic project to you guys. So I hope you guys are really excited. And I hope you guys are going to learn a lot of stuff in this course, right? Over here we have this add new template also. So these are whatever the features I explained so far, these are all the client features, the user features. So for instance, if you want to add any new template, so we need an admin page also. So that's the reason we do have this admin new template. So here I can able to delete or I can add a new template over here. So I can choose from the default the category. These are the filter options that we are using in the front end. So we are fixing it over here. So these are the limited options right now we do have, since there are lots of features that we can implement in this project in the future. But right now, for the beginner friendly, to keep it's a beginner friendly, these are the features that we made it simply as it is. So adding a template over here is a tricky part. So the reason why I'm saying it's a tricky part, it's because each and every template over here, it's fully customizable. It's fully customized, right? So the entire route, it's managed automatically. But when it comes to a custom template, you need to design each and every components, right? So over here, we're having these templates is just an image. So we are just adding the UI of that template. Then using this ID, we need to create exactly the same name for that particular component. Then we need to start design that component. Then we need to push the component and make it live. So every time whenever the admin wants to add a new template, this is the way that we need to add the template, because that's a customized component, right? So I'd say it's having a unique design and it's having a unique UI. So the reason to keep it unique, it's the only way manually we need to create a customized component. Then we need to push it to the cloud, right? So this is the awesome project that we are going to build in this course. I hope you guys are excited. So without wasting your time, let's jump into the video. All right, people. So now we have to create a new project folder. So let's create a new project folder over here, and let me give a name as resume builder hyphen YouTube, and this is the November month, right? So this is the project that we are going to build, and let's keep this right. Let me open this services, new terminal folder, and let me open it here, and let me open it in the Visual Studio Code. All right, there we go. So let me create a new text file over here, data.txt. So let's bring up the plan, right? So what are the things that we need to set up? First of all, we need to install the React app, right? We need to install the React app. Then we need to install the package called Tailwind CSS. Then we need to set up the React router. Then of course we need the React icons. Then of course we need the Firebase packages and the framer motion for animations. So these are the packages that we are using. And once we're done, we need to set up the Firebase project. And once setting up the Firebase project, then we need to set up the before all these things, we need to set up the environment setup. Then we need to set up the GitHub configurations. So these are the steps that we need to these are the things that we need to set up over here, right? So what's the first thing that we need to do? So let me copy this. Let me bring the notes, and let me keep it over here. Environment setups, GitHub configuration, React app, Tailwind CSS, React router, and Firebase projects and everything. Let's do it one by one. So let me delete this. So we don't need this anymore because we need to bring the React app over here. So before starting into it, so I'm using the yarn. So we need the Node.js first. What's the first step that we need to do? We need to do the environment setup, right? So over here, if you go to your browser, so search for Node.js. So that will take you to the Node.js. If you search for Node.js, you can find the very first link, nodejs.org. So you can able to see the versions which is available over there. So I strongly recommend you to download the recommended versions. So click it and download and install the Node.js. So once you download and install the Node.js, so you need to make sure whether the Node.js is installed or not. So to do that, all you have to do is to node hyphen version. So that will return the version number of the node. So once you successfully install the node, so we do have the different package installers, right? npm, npx, yarn. In this case, I'm using yarn. So if you're familiarized with npm or yarn, so that doesn't matter. Both are package installer, both have some advantages and disadvantages. But in this case, in this project, I'm going to use the yarn. So wherever the term I'm using the yarn add, you need to use, if you're using npm, you need to use npm install, right? So to install the yarn globally, all you have to do is to npm install -g globally yarn, right? This is the command that you need to run to install the yarn globally in this machine. In this case, I already have the yarn installed, so just run the yarn -- version. That will return the version number of the yarn. So now the package manager is ready. So all you have to do is to create a React app. So to create a React app, all I have to do is to yarn create space React -app space /. So this is the command that you need to run. So hit the enter. So that will download the React app in the project folder which we created. So hit enter. So usually this will take some time. So please wait until it's successfully downloaded, and let's start install the necessary things after it's successfully downloaded. So now let's please wait. All right, then in this case, my project is successfully downloaded. So all I have to do is to install the necessary packages. So before jumping into installing the necessary packages, so we need to install certain extensions, so developer extensions. So first important extension that you need to download is the React snippets. So basically this React snippet, this one, ES67, where is this? ES7 React and Redux snippet. So basically this snippet will help you to write the React code much faster. Since we're using the Tailwind CSS, you need to search for Tailwind CSS. So this will gives you the suggestions of the Tailwind CSS classes. This one, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. So please go ahead and download this extension. So that will gives you the suggestions when you are writing the CSS classes and everything. And then I'm using this here for code formatter to aligning my complete code structures and everything to keep it organized and look to have a nice look when you're writing the coding stuff, right? So these are the developer extensions that I'm using over here, right? Then after all you guys install all these necessary extensions, so let's go ahead and install the necessary packages. So clear it. Let's say yarn add react router hyphen dom, react router dom for the React navigation. Then react hyphen icons, this is for all kinds of icons that we are using in this project. Then framer hyphen motion. Then the rest of the packages that we will add later one after another whenever the thing that we needed it most, right? So hit the enter. So this will add that necessary packages. So in the meantime, so we need to set up our GitHub configurations and everything, right? So once it's successfully downloaded and installed it, so we need to set up the GitHub configuration. So because we need to push all the codes or whatever we are writing, we need to push it into our GitHub, right? So that's what we're going to do next. All right, then. So to install the GitHub in your local machine, so first make sure that you have a GitHub account for yourself. Then you need to search for git download. So all you have to do is to click this and download the recommended version, whatever it's showing over there. So please click next and do install the Git. Once you download and install the Git in your machine for the very first time, you need to configure your user email and as well as the user name, right? So to do that, all you have to do is to search for git user config, right? So to do that, git user and email config, search for git user and email config in the Google. So that will provide you this configuration link over here. So all you have to do is to copy this, and once the GitHub is successfully installed, and copy this command and open your git bash and paste this and change your first name and as well as change your email address. Right, this is the very first step that you need to do once you successfully downloaded and installed the GitHub in your Git in your local machine, right? So this is what that we need to do. Now we need to go ahead and create a GitHub repository for this particular project. So let me open my GitHub profile. So GitHub, I need to click here to create a new repository, and let's keep this as React full stack resume builder web app November 23, right? So let's keep it as 2023, and I'm going to keep this project as private. So click create project, create repository. So that is completely created now. So then what I need to do is all I have to do is to get back to my Visual Studio Code. And you can see this git source control, and here you need to give the messages or whatever the message that we need to give. So before adding the messages and committing and everything, first I need to add the remote in our project. So click this three dot over here and go to the remote option and click add remote. All I have to do is to add remote. So click add remote from the GitHub. So if you're doing this step for the very first time, so it will ask you to authenticate for several times. So please authenticate yourself to access your GitHub account into your Visual Studio Code. So then you can see the GitHub repository which you created for this project right now. So choose that and give a local git name. So I'm going to use the same name, React Full Stack Resume Builder November 2023. Enter. So that will successfully add the remote to our project. So then next we have to go ahead and customize this complete app and reconfigure the routes and everything. Then we need to make our first commit to push this project into our GitHub, right? So that's what we are going to do next. All right, then since we successfully configured the GitHub and everything, now we need to restructure our entire React app, right? So that's what we are going to do now. So let's delete everything over here, right? So let me delete everything inside the source folder. I'm just going to delete everything. Delete it. I'm going to recreate the source folder over here, src. So inside this folder, now we have to create a several number of folders to work with. So let's create, for instance, let's say once again, oh, come on. Okay. So what we have to do is, so inside the source folder, so we need to create a different sets of folders. For first of all, I'm going to create two different folders over here. One is going to be pages, and another one is going to be containers, and another one is going to be components. All right, so these are the three necessary folders that we need. Then we need to create one more file over here called index.js, and we need to create one more file called index.css. And inside the containers folder, we need to create a new file called app.jsx. And inside this containers, I'm going to create one more file called index.js, because inside the containers we might have n number of files, so we can't keep on exporting each file separately, so that will lead to a multiple input statement. So I need to export every single containers files from this single index.js, so I can import it in a single line. That's the reason we are doing that. So here I'm just going to say RAFCE, so that will the React snippet which we already installed from the Visual Studio Code extensions. So click save. So then let's jump into the we need to rename this CSS file name index.css, right? So inside this index.css, so right now we are not going to have anything else, right? But we need to add something later when we are configuring the Tailwind CSS. So right now I'm just going to keep it empty. Then app.js is ready. So over here in the index.js, which is inside the containers folder, we need to export our app.jsx file. So export default as app itself from where /app.jsx. So whenever I need to create a new container, all I have to do is to create the component. Then I need to export this component from here. So whenever I'm importing it, I can import it in a single import line, right? So let me delete this and let me delete this. We don't need that so far now. Let's jump into the root index.js file. All right, so inside the source we have the root index.js file. This is the place where we need to configure our React, where the place we are accessing the DOM element and everything. So first let's import the necessary packages. So let's say import React from the React, then import React DOM from React DOM/client. Right, this is the package that we need. Then we need to import the CSS file. So import / from the local file. I do have the index.css that I need to add, right? Then we already added the React router DOM, so we need to import that particular line also. Let's add the import from React router DOM. So what are the things that we need to do? We need to get the browser router, and I'm going to keep it as the router in this name instead of browser router. Okay, then I need to get the root. So basically the React will works how exactly it's working. So every single component, whatever I'm writing, it's completely mounted inside this particular division, this root division. So I need to access this root division, then I need to create a DOM element so that I can render all my components inside this division. So that's how the React application is working, right? So all I have to do is to create a root first. So const root equals to React DOM dot create root. Inside this, I need to access the ID from the public index.html from the public folder. So get element by ID and access that by ID by using this root ID name. So now we created our root element. So now I need to render it. So root dot render using this render function. Inside here, I'm going to render everything using the React strict mode. So React dot strict mode. Open it. So inside here, I'm going to bring the router because we're going to have the multiple routes. So I need to wrap the entire component inside this router. Then I need to bring the app component inside here. So we need to import this app component, right? So basically this app component is coming from import from dot slash components. So not components, dot slash containers. So inside the containers, we already exported the app. So let's import it over here. Just like that, right? So now everything is fine. So let's fire it up. So that should display the app, the name, just app in the website. So let's say yawn start. So that will load our development server and that will brings up our, here we go. So it's loaded our component and it's rendered inside our ID over there, right? So which means our component is loaded successfully and it's installed and it's up and running perfectly fine. So let me stop it over here and we need to install the Tailwind CSS and that's what we are going to do next for the customizing the UI and everything. So let's go ahead and install the Tailwind CSS. All right, then since we successfully restructured our entire project, so now let's go ahead and install the Tailwind CSS. So here, let's open up the browser and search for Tailwind CSS with React app. So you can see this link. So click this, and that will open up the way how to configure the Tailwind CSS with the React app and everything. So you can use this documentation to install the Tailwind CSS with our applications, right? So we already installed the React applications and everything. All I have to do is to install this package. So here it's given with npm. So we are using yawn. So wherever the term you're seeing npm install, use yawn add. So I'm going to copy from here to here, copy it. And here I'm just going to say yawn add -t Tailwind CSS. So that will download it from there. Then I need to copy this initialization command. So that will initialize the Tailwind CSS to generate this tailwind.config.js, right? So here I'm just going to say yawn add yawn tailwind init. So that will initialize the tailwind config.js file over here. So you can able to see this tailwind config.js file. So later we need to customize it. So here inside this, you need to copy this line because it needs to monitor every single file inside the source, whether it is JSX or TSX or whatever the subfolder it is in. It's need to keep on monitoring is there any changes in the Tailwind utility classes or not, right? So save these changes. All right, then I need to copy this and I need to paste it inside the index.css. So copy it and paste it here. Save these changes. Then I need to make sure whether it is working fine or not. So all I have to do is to let's jump into the app.jsx file inside the containers app.jsx, and here I'm just going to say class. Let's give it as a width screen or something. So width the screen and flex item center and justify center. So that should bring this text in the exact top center at this location. So let's fire up our server. Let's say on start. There we go. So it's here and now it's here. So which means the Tailwind CSS is configured perfectly and it's working as it's supposed to be, right? So along with this, I need to add few more customized font size and fonts and everything. So let's go ahead and add those stuffs. So in the index.css, I'm going to use a font. So to install the font, so we can go to the Google Fonts, and click over here. The font which we are using over here is Moly. This is the font that we are using, right? So instead of downloading it and copying the URL from here, you can use the extension, search for Google Fonts. So you can download this Google Fonts, this one, you can download this Google Fonts. Once you downloaded this Google Fonts, all you have to do is to Control Shift P and search for Google Fonts. You can find two different ways to import the Google Fonts. In this case, we are going to use the @import. Select the @import and search for Moly, and that will add that URL over here. So then I need to strike the styles for the body tag. So width of this body tag, it's going to be 100 pw, the viewport width, and the overflow of X in the left and right direction, it should be hidden. It should not overflow left and right. And the background color, I'm just going to keep it hash F1, 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 right? And the height is completely, it's going to be auto height. It needs to adjust according to the content. And the font family of the entire page, it's going to be the font which we added, Moly and sans serif. And then we need to get the system UI. If none of the fonts is loaded, it's need to use the system UI fonts, right? So save as changes. So these are the default styles that we need to add. So the Tailwind CSS is configured perfectly, and we customize the CSS files and everything, and it's loaded perfectly. So the next important step that we need to go ahead and configure the React routes. So let's go ahead and do that. All right then, so let's jump into the app.jsx, because this is our root component. So we need to start customize everything inside this app.jsx, right? So let's delete this stuff and recreate the same component app. So over here, what I'm going to do is, so I need to configure the custom routes and everything. So over here, we do have two different main routes. One is the home route, right? We need to create a home route, and another one is the auth route, where the user can able to authenticate himself by using the Gmail or GitHub or whatever it is, right? These are the two different routes that we need to create. So before creating that, first what we need to do is we need to import these packages from the React router DOM. So from React router DOM, I need to bring these two different packages, which is nothing but the route and the routes. These are the two different packages that we need to add. Then, and I need to make sure this division is not necessary. So I'm going to bring the suspense, which is coming from the React. Okay, so basically, if there are any issues in the routes, whatever we are trying to do, it's need to fall back to the loader, right? It's need to fall back to the main loader, which we haven't designed. So we will design it later. But for the time being, I'm just going to load this division with the text called loading, right? So if there is any for suspense, like if there is any issues on the routing or anything else, it needs to fall back to the safe route. So that's the reason for we are using the suspense. Then we need to bring the routes. Inside this route, we are going to create the routes. So basically, in the path, whatever it's coming, it's need to load this element, which is nothing but our home component, which we haven't created. So let's keep this as a home container or something, or let's bring it as a home screen or something, right? Then there is another route, which is basically the path. It's as auth, right? This is the path, and it should load the element authentication. This is the string that it needs to load it. So basically what we are going to do is inside the pages, we are going to create these two different pages. So let's go here, let's create the home screen .jsx RAFC, save it and close it. Make sure that you are using the exact same name over there and there. Then I need to create one more component, which is authentication. Click new file, authentication.jsx, and inside the pages I need to create a new file called index.js, because we need to export these two screens over there, right? So RAFCE for authentication screen. Close this. So let's export those two different screens. Export default us from /home screen. Copy it and paste it over here. Copy and paste it and change this to authentication. Copy it and paste it over here. Save the changes. Now we can import these two screens over here in a single import statement. So it's not showing up, so let's add it by ourselves. Import from /pages. So from there I can add what we can do. I can add the home screen, and as well as I can add the authentication. So I can import those two. So over there, now let's go here and let's check it out. Okay, it's loading the home screen, and if I'm typing auth, so that will load the authentication screen. Apart from this auth, if it is coming anything else, that will load the home screen, right? So it's working perfectly that we are in the authentication screen. So now let's go ahead and start customizing the authentication screen. That's what we are going to do next. All right, then, since we successfully finished the main routing and everything, so let's go ahead and customize the authentication part, authentication UI. So let me bring it side by side view so that we can see it completely. Wait a second. Let me bring it here and let me keep it side by side. So now we can able to see both screen, and let me navigate to auth. All right, here we go. So now we are inside the auth UI. All right, so let me bring the authentication UI in the side by side over here. Let me log out and let's click the auth. So this is the UI that we need to design, right? So we need to bring the assets and everything. So I already dropped the assets in the description, so you can get the assets from there itself. All right, so in this case, let me bring the assets folder from here to inside the source. Let me bring the assets folder. So inside the assets folder, you can find the list of images that we are going to use for the designs, what kind of template that we are going to use, and the template 2. And for each template, we do have a different folders, template 1 and template 2, and the logo and the no data image animated file and the index file. So we exported every single part over here, right? This is the assets folder that you can download it from the description below. So please go ahead and download it from there. All right, so now we have all the assets which is necessary for the UI. So let's jump into the designing this part. Okay, so let's customize this class first. So class equals to, so this is going to be the top section, the main container section. So we can say like auth section. So instead of writing the complete the CSS part over here, because this is going to be a very big list of the CSS utility classes, so I'm going to show you how to write the custom utility classes inside the Tailwind CSS. So let's copy this auth section and go to your index.js. So let's open the index.css, and over here I'm going to use @layer property. Inside the @layer property, I'm going to create our custom class auth section, and I'm going to apply all the utility classes properties of the Tailwind CSS. So okay, so width full and hatch string and overflow hidden and flex column, item start and justify in the starting position, and the padding px is going to be 6 and py is going to be 4, and the gap between each and every property is going to be 6. So this is how we need to add the custom CSS, and let's see how exactly it looks like. So let's refresh it. and let's save these changes. So now you can see the padding and everything is applied according to the styles. It should be in the top left corner. So the custom styles, it's working perfectly as it's supposed to be. So in case if you're creating a very big list of classes, so you can create a custom classes over there, custom classes. So some cases at some point these custom classes will not work as we expected. At that point we can adjust it here and there. Okay, so now let's bring the top section first, and let me bring the image. Let's bring the image logo over here, which I exported from the assets folder. So let's import it from there, from /assets. So logo, save the changes. So that should display the logo over there. So let's write the customized class name. So width is going to be 12. So use the customized class only if you are writing a bunch of CSS utility, Tailwind utility classes, right? So height is going to be auto, and object it's going to be contain. Save the changes. So that's how it looks like. Then below that we need to bring the main section. Main section, the place where we are going to display all the remaining part over here. This one. Come on, this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring that. Okay, for that particular thing, so that we need to create a new division. So let's say class name, which is going to be width full, of course, width full. Then flex 1. So that should take the complete available length in between in it. So flex column direction, and the items, everything should be in the center, and justify the content in the center. Gap between is going to be 6, and the background is going to be red color. So now we can see it's occupying the entire middle area due to this flex 1 property. Okay, so I don't need this background color, so let me remove that background color. Cool. So now we know that it's working perfectly. So let's bring the footer section, then we jump into the middle section. So let's bring the footer section. Okay, so this footer section basically which is going to be common for every single pages. So for that, what we need to do, we need to create a separate container for that. So inside the container, I'm going to create a new file called footer.jsx, RAFCE, save it, and I'm going to export it from the containers. Let's keep this as footer, copy it, and export it in the same name as footer itself. Save the changes. And now what we need to do, we need to bring the footer over here, footer, and make sure it is imported from the container folder, not like this, and wrap this into the object. Save these changes. Now you should be able to see the footer over there. All right, so let's go ahead and start customize the footer part over here. For this, let's add the class name, and let me enable the word wrap, so that will wrap inside the screen. Cool. So width full, and flex item center, justify the content between, and the border, it's going to be border top, it's going to be gray color, border gray, no, border gray, come on, border gray, it's going to be 300 points. So save this. So now you should be able to see the border over there instead of this footer. So I'm going to bring we can see over here, this is one division and this is one division, right? So to do that, all we have to do is to create two separate division over there, div 1 and div 2. Inside this div 1, I'm just going to bring the logo. So let me bring this, paste it, import it. Instead of 12, I'm going to make this 8. Then you should see the logo over there. Cool. Then I need to bring one more paragraph tag. I'm just going to say express resume. Come on. Express resume. All right. So it's displaying the text. So next, what we need to do is we need to align those properties. Okay, so let's bring it in the straight lines. So let's say class name, it's going to be flex item center and justify center, and let's bring it gap as 3 or something. So now you can able to see it's aligned perfectly over there. And what else we need to do? Let's add some padding py. So now we can see we have some enough space over there. Then for the next division, we have to do the same stuff. Copy this and let's bring it over here. Class, oops, not there, class name, paste it, and instead of gap 3 I'm going to use the gap 6. So I'm going to use this link tag from the React router down, so to navigate it to a very specific path. Right now I'm just going to navigate this to home route, right? And the class name, it's going to be text blue 700, and text is going to be small text. Text is going to be home, contact, privacy and policy. So contact, privacy, policy. So if you don't want to wrap these texts, so just add this one more time, because if there is any empty spaces, it will automatically bring the next word in the next line. So we don't want that. So let's use the white space, no wrap. So that will not bring the policy to the next line, even if you are shrinking your UI. So now the footer part is done. So let's get back to the authentication main section, the place where we are going to display this, all these stuffs. So over here, inside this main section, first let's bring that the text, very big text. So let's say h1, and that is going to be welcome to Express Domain. All right, so now we have that text. Then let's bring this expressway to create the resume paragraph, copy and paste that text inside. After that, what we have to do, we need to bring the one more text, which is going to be h2 authenticate, say the changes, and then we need to bring a separate division. Inside that separate division, we need to bring these two different buttons and everything, right? So this is how it looks. So let's customize these for this h1 tag. So let's say text3xl. We need to keep it text3xl, and from the large device onwards it should be text4xl. So then text blue 700. So basically from the small device onwards it will be on this size, but once it reaches the large screen, from that moment onwards it will use this 4xl size. All right, so now for this paragraph tag, class name, we use the text2xl every time. We don't need to increase at all. So then text gray, it's going to be 600. Say the changes, that's how it looks. Then for this authenticate, let's use the for this is supposed to be base size, and this is supposed to be text2xl, text gray 600. Say the changes, this is how it looks like, which is exactly the same way what we are seeing it right now. Then we need to create a button which is going to be authenticate, and basically we need to create this one as a reusable component, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two separate components, which is going to resemble that button how we are looking right now, and it's going to perform two different actions, but the component is going to be exactly a single component. So that's what we are going to do next. All right then, so now let's go here and create a new component. Inside the components folder, I'm going to create a new file called index.js to export the multiple components, and I'm going to create a new file over here called auth button with provider. That's the component name that I'm going to use, JSX RAFCE, say these changes, and export this from here. Export default as from /auth button with provider, copy it and export it in the exact same name itself. Say these changes. Now we exported it. Then let's jump back to the auth provider. So we need to bring this button inside the authentication, inside this specific division. So let's customize this division first. So let's say class name, width, of course for the small devices it should use the complete width, but from the large devices onwards I'm just going to reduce the width, width 96. All right, then rounded, of course it's going to be medium. For the time being I'm just going to use the red, so I need to see how exactly it's looking. Okay, we can't see anything. because we haven't added anything inside. Currently I'm just using p2, so now you should be able to see something over the padding. Okay, rounded empty, we added the padding, and everything should be inside the flex column direction. So flex column, then everything should be in the center and justify in the starting position, which means it should start from the top center. Then the gap should be 6. So we know that this is how it looks. And when we convert this to in the mobile screen, now you can see it's occupying the complete width. When we bring back to the big screen, it's using the 96. So we are creating a responsive design by the time when you're writing the Tailwind CSS properties, right? So I don't need this background color over here. Let me delete this. And inside here, we need to bring those two different buttons. So auth, authentication, yeah, this is the one that we need to bring, but make sure that is imported from the components, because it's importing a single component. Later from that folder, if you're trying to import multiple components, it will take multiple import statements. So to avoid that, that's the reason we create the index.js. So import in this way. So now let me copy and paste it 2 more times, save changes. Now we should be able to see those buttons 2 different times. So this provider, what are the things that this that component needed? We need to supply the icon, and we need to supply the label, and we need to have the chevron icon over there, right? So and then we need, along with that, we need to supply one more information, which is nothing but what kind of authentication provider that it's going to use. That's the information that we need to supply. So let's jump into the auth provider over here. So let's create the 3 different properties for that component. First component, which is icon. So the reason why I'm using this icon I as a capital, because we are sending the reference of the icon component, because since the React icon, it's a component, we are sending that component as a reference to this property. So the component should always have the first letter as a capital letter. That's the reason we are using the icon as a capital letter, right? Let me explain you by the time when we are implementing it. Label, then what else we need? The provider, what exact provider that it is. Save the changes, and let's apply the property over here. So icon, so first one is going to be Google, so I'm going to use the for Google. Okay, so let's import that separately from here. Import from React icons /fa6. So from here, I'm going to use that Google icon, this one. Then I'm going to get that Git icon for Git. Okay, spelling mistake, for GitHub. Yeah, this is the one. So these are the 2 icons that we need to supply for Google. We are sending it as a reference instead of as a component. So we are sending that component reference. So inside here, we can use this as a component. All right, let me show you. So then we need to supply the label. So what the label that we need to display inside? Sign in with Google. Then provider, what kind of provider that we are going to use? This is going to be Google Auth provider. This is the class name provided by the Firebase Auth. So I'm going to use the exact same class name over here. Then for this, let's supply the same, copy and paste this, save it. So you will see exact the same stuff, because we haven't added over there anything. We haven't added anything over here. And I need to change this to for GitHub and sign in with GitHub, and this is going to be GitHub Auth provider. All right, so later we'll check this change, name changes and everything. For right now, so far so good. So let's go to the authentication button now, and over inside here, let's fix this UI part. So this division is going to be class name. Width, of course, it's going to take the complete available width, and the padding px, it's going to be 4, py, it's going to be 3, and rounded, it's going to be empty. And from the border, I'm just going to add 2 pixels for that border, and the border blue, it's going to be, let's say, the same 700. And then what else? Flex, everything should be in the center, and the content should be in the center. Justify in the center. All right, then what else we need to do? We need to bring the cursor. So let me wrap this so you can able to see it completely. Then cursor, it's going to be the pointer. Save this, so it looks like that. After this, what we need to do, we need to group this, because when you are hovering it, if you have a look at here, if I hover it, you can see the changing the color of the every single part inside this division. So to do that, we need to group all those things as a single unit. So that's the reason we are grouping it. Then hover, whenever I'm hovering it, I need to change this to blue 700. All right. And on active, if it is active, I need to reduce the scale percentage. So scale to 95%. Then duration of that animation is going to be 150. And hover, I'm going to add some shadow effects to save the changes. So now if you go here, you can see it's changing the color and it's adding, and you can see that duration effects, and you can see if you click this, you can see it's having some nice active scale animations, and of course it's adding the shadow effects also, right? So now it's looking much better. So let's bring inside everything one by one. So let's bring the icon. See, this icon is a property, but we are using it as a component over here. The reason why it is because inside here we are sending it a component as a reference to this property. That's the reason we are using it as a component over here, right? So class name is going to be let's say text text primary color. So this text primary and all those things, which is a customized Tailwind config. So I already dropped the link in the description so that you can copy the Tailwind color codes from there, or it's nothing that much complicated. Very few color codes only I added in that customization of the property of the color in the Tailwind config.js. So here inside this extend, just paste it. These are the customized. This is the entire style that we customized inside the Tailwind config.js. Please pause the video and just type it, or click the link in the description below and copy and paste these color codes over there. So save these changes and let me get back over here to the authentication button. And here I'm just going to say text primary. That's the color that we want to use. All right. Then the size of that button is going to be text XL. 1 second. What happened? Yeah, here text XL. Then group, whenever we are hovering, group hover, whenever we are doing the group hover, I need to change this color to white. Okay, then let's bring the paragraph text, and inside here I need to bring the label. We need to display that label property. Then for this, let's add some class name. Of course, the style and everything is going to be the same stuff. Let's copy this. Just we are going to change the size of the text, LG. And after this paragraph, we are going to bring the chevron right icon. This is common for both component, class, text primary, then text base. On hover, group hover, I'm going to change the text color to white. Save the changes, and you can see it's looking like this. And something is not looking good. What it is, we missed something. Instead of justify center, let's give it as justify between. So that should resolve this issue. Look at that. So now we are having two nice buttons, and for this on click event we need to perform two different actions. Okay, so that's we need to label that part. So that's what exactly we are going to do next. All right then, so let's go ahead and start writing the main logic behind this authentication. So whenever I'm clicking this button, I need to handle an event, on click event, right? So to do that, what we need to do is I'm just going to say on click, I'm going to say handle click event. This is the button that I'm going to create. Over here, let's create that button. So handle click and create an arrow function, and let's make this arrow function like asynchronous function, because this function needs to wait for a certain time of period until the authentication everything happens properly. This function needs to wait. That's the reason we are changing this to asynchronous function. So then I need to bring up the authentication provider. What are the two different authentication provider that we are using over here? Google Auth provider and GitHub Auth provider. So we need to create an instance for both of those providers. So let's create an instance for both those providers. So const Google Auth provider object is equals to new Google Auth provider. Okay, so it's not bringing up. The reason it's not showing up is because we haven't added the Firebase in our project, right? So we need to add the Firebase in our project. So before doing that, let's what should we do is let's make sure this on-click event is working perfectly for both these two buttons separately. When you click the sign in with Google, that should trigger the Google button, and when you click with the sign in with GitHub, that should trigger the GitHub button, right? So to do that, inside here, I'm going to use the switch case, and I'm supplying the provider inside the provider property. So case, if the case is equals to this Google Auth provider, then I'm just going to say console.log inside the Google Auth. All right. So I need to break this part over here. Let me copy this and let me paste it one more time. And if is equals to this part, we are going to keep this one. All right. So by default, what we are going to do, and we should have a default case also, right? By default, if none of these cases are matching, by default, we are going to change the user to that Google Auth only, because we don't have any authentication provider apart from that. Okay. So by default also, I'm forcefully navigating the user to be sign in with Google. So let's make sure this console.log is working perfectly. So inspect elements, go to the console, and if I click sign in with Google inside the Google Auth, if I click sign in with GitHub, it's still showing the Google Auth. The reason is because I haven't changed this GitHub Auth. All right. So now if I click this, you should get the GitHub Auth. So it's working perfectly. So this functions, and it's working perfectly based on this button on click. So now what we have to do, we have to go ahead and initialize the Firebase project and configure it in our project React app. Then we need to start working with the authentication provider. All right, then. So let's go ahead and start initializing the Firebase. So let's open up your terminal and create a new terminal over here. And inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say yarn add Firebase. So hit enter. So let it download. In the meanwhile, open a new browser tab and search for firebase.google.com. So there we are going to create a new project. Go to console and create a new project over here. Create a new project. Name that project as resume builder -YouTube November 2023. Right, that's the project that I'm going to build, and I'm going to disable the Google Analytics, create the project. So this will start initializing, creating the project in your Firebase, and in the meanwhile, you can see the project, the Firebase is successfully downloaded. All right, so since the Firebase the package is downloaded successfully, let's create those two different authentication instances. So const Google Auth provider equals to new Google Auth provider. So basically that is coming from the Firebase. So let's say import from that, from what that is a Firebase, that's a Firebase Auth, and from there we need to bring the Google Auth provider and as well as the GitHub Auth provider. So make sure, copy this name. See, we misspelled it. It's supposed to be lowercase h, right? And you can see we misspelled it over here. That's the reason. So let's change this over here and as well as over here. So we don't want any unwanted mistakes in futures as well. And Google Auth provider, copy this, paste it here, and as well as paste it here. Right? Save these changes. Fine. So this is supposed to be Google Auth provider. Then copy and paste it, and this is supposed to be Google GitHub auth provider, and this git auth provider object. So now we have the two different authentication providers over here. Let's go click continue this project. That will open the project dashboard. So Firebase allows you to work with iOS separately, Android, or the web apps, or Flutter, or Unity. So these are the different apps that we can connect directly to Firebase. And in this case, we are going to create a web app. So create a web app. And for this web app, I'm going to create name. So resume builder YouTube November 2023. So click register app. Don't worry about the Firebase hosting. We'll worry about the hosting later. So in this case, I'm just going to register that app, and we already installed the Firebase package, and this is the API key that we need to configure in our applications, in our React app. So for the time being, let's go to the console and let's enable the necessary information that we needed. All right, so we need the Firebase storage. So let's go to the Firebase storage and click get started, and choose the production mode. Click next and choose the nearby location for your case. In this case, I'm just going to use the default location itself. So this will take few minutes, or sorry, few seconds, or sometime a minute. So please wait until it's successfully creating those bucket and setting up all the configurations for you. So please wait, it's taking some time. So it's setting up the security rules now. So to keep your storage and everything highly secured, you need to customize the security rule, everything. So Firebase provide you some menu options and some playgrounds where you can customize your security rules and everything. The rules which I'm talking about, just click the rules. By default, all the permissions are denied. Basically, you can't read or update or delete, whatever it is. It's everything is false. So I'm just making this as an open connection that as anyone can literally access this storage. That's the rule that we have happen to written over there. But in future, if you're deploying it, you should write a more secured security rule to work with the Firebase storage. So this is the playground which I'm talking about. You can play around over here, and you can make sure that the user can access only if they're authenticated to our website. So you can write the customized rules. So all you have to do is to go through the official documentation, right? In this case, I'm just going to keep it open for the time being. Files. So far we don't have anything in it. Then we need the Firestore database also. So let's go to the Firestore database and let's enable that Firestore database too. Let's create a database. Okay, it's loading. All right. So everything is checked, and click next. Production mode, just the exact same thing. Choose the production mode. Cannot enable the Firebase for this project. An unknown error occurred. Why? Cancel. Let's refresh this. I'm not sure why that error is happening. So Firestore database. This project is set up to use Cloud Firestore database mode. Something is happening differently. I'm not sure what it is. Okay. This is something new which I'm seeing over here. Let's switch back to the native mode itself. They literally changed everything. There we go. I'm not sure what exactly happened right now. So Firebase did some updates in their Firestore database. They enable some new mode, so that will help you to access the Firestore separately, where you can do some indexes and imports. All these things are maintained separately over here. And inside this, you can see we changed it to the native mode itself. This is the native mode. They created a new mode to work with the Firestore, which I haven't no idea what exactly happening over here. I need to go through it. And this is the new update, recently updated the Firebase. Okay, no worries. They have the options to get back to the native mode. It will work perfectly as it's supposed to be. Good. Now click the rules over here. So just we have to change these rules exactly how we wish to. By default, every permissions over here it is denied. So let's change this to true. Publish. So now it's published, and now the data we can create a collections and we can work over here. So if you go to the storage, also we enable the storage and everything. So now let's get back to the project settings over here. Project settings. All we have to do is to copy this, copy it, and let's get back here. Inside the source folder, let's create a new folder called config. Inside this config folder, I'm going to create a new file called firebase.config.js. Let's paste it over here, and let's import from Firebase /app. Copy and paste it. Auth, paste it. Firestore. So from the app, we need to get the apps. Get apps. Initialize app. And auth, we need to get the auth. And for Firestore, we need to get Firestore. So let's create an app. So const app equals to get apps dot length. If the length is greater than 0, that means app is already initialized. So get that app information, or else we have to initialize a new app with this configuration. And then we need to create const auth. So get auth with the app information which we have in our hand, and get the db information, const db equal to get Firestore with the app information. So we have to export all these things. Let's export the auth and as well as the db. So we don't need the app, so we can later, if we need, we can use it. And these are the keys that we need to maintain it separately, right? So what we have to do is we have to create a separate environment folder, and we have to maintain all these things. So not environment folder, we need to create an environment file, and we need to maintain all these things in a secured way, because we have to upload these keys in our GitHub. So we can't push these public, the private keys into the your public GitHub profile. So to keep it secure, what we need to do is in your root directory, which means inside the source folder. So right click, and inside that source folder, I'm going to create .env. Okay. So what I'm going to do is basically, I'm just going to copy this part literally from here, copy and paste it over here. Right, and wherever we have this colon, we need to bring that equal sign. So use your alt key or options key to create the multi-cursor editor. Delete this equal and move to the end and delete that comma. And now what we have to do, we have to prefix this everything with the React app. So create the multi-cursor editor one more time. So we need to change this to React underscore app underscore. So now change these things. So this is going to be the API key, right? API underscore key, and this is going to be auth domain. So auth underscore domain, and this is going to be the project ID. So project ID, and this is going to be storage bucket. So storage underscore bucket, and this is messaging sender ID. So let's say messaging underscore sender underscore ID, and this is the app ID, right? So app underscore ID. So these are the we should maintain it in a separate environment file. And now what we have to do, we have to change this part over here too. Create the multi-cursor editor just by holding your alt key or options key and select everything. I'm going to delete this completely, and I'm going to say process.env process.env.react app key, React app API key. So we copied and pasted the API key. Then we need to bring the auth domain, copy the auth domain. Please make sure that you're copying it exactly to that specific keyword, auth domain. Then we need to bring the project ID, copy it and bring it over here. Then we need to bring the storage bucket, copy it and bring it over here. Then we need to bring the message sending ID, copy it and bring it over here. And of course we need to bring the app ID, copy this. Oh, where it is, I think I closed it. Firebase, paste it over here, save the changes. Since we enable the environment variable, so we have to restart our server, then only it will load that environment file. Yarn start. So it's loaded, it's loading. Okay, so now it's loaded successfully. So now we successfully configured the Firebase with our local project. And of course we need to enable the authentication providers, right? So let's go to the authentication. So let's click the get started option. So we have to enable two different authentication providers. One is sign in with Google. So enable the Google and choose the email and click save. So select your email address and click save. So that will enable the Google authentication. And go to the add new authentication provider and click the GitHub, and you need to generate these two keys from your GitHub profile. So click enable. So I need to bring the client ID and the client secret. So to do that, I have to open my GitHub profile. So let me go to my GitHub profile and log it in and go to the settings. Under the settings tabs, you can see the developer settings. Go to the developer settings, and there you can see the Auth apps. So click this Auth app. So click new Auth app and give the as a application name. So YouTube resume builder November 2023. Okay, so homepage URL. So for the time being, I'm just giving the local over here. So if you need, you can give that local URL, but this is completely necessary. And in this case, what is our homepage URL? This localhost 3000 only. So localhost 3000. So give that for the time being. And the application authorization callback URL. So we need to bring this authorization callback URL. You can get it from here. Copy this and go here and paste it here. That's your authorization callback URL. All right. So now register this application. Once you register it, you will get a client ID. Copy this client ID and give it to your Firebase. Then you need to generate a secret client key and type your password over here. All right, so that will gives you the client secret key. Keep this securely, copy this and paste it over here, and then all you have to do is to save these changes. So this is how you need to authenticate. You need to create the authentication provider for your GitHub. So now we have the Google authentication provider, and as well as we have the GitHub authentication provider. So the next part, we are going to do the main authentication. So that's what we are going to do next. All right then, so now let's get back to the authentication provider button component. Okay. Since we successfully created the providers, now let's start working with the real authentication process over here. Instead of just doing the console log, all I'm going to do is to create the sign-in, real sign-in. So let's say avoid sign-in with redirect. So basically we have two different options, pop-up and redirect. In some cases, some of the users will block all the pop-ups. So at that point, your website doesn't allow to pop up, to show that pop-up to sign in with Google and all those. So to avoid this, let's overcome this issue with the sign in with redirect, right? So I'm going to use the sign in with the redirect option. So click the sign in with the redirect. So if you wonder where I can learn about this stuff, so all you have to do is to click here, that it will take you to the official documentation, or search for Firebase documentation. That will take you to the documentation, and go to the build and there you can see the authentication part. Click it and go to the web and click Google. So if you scroll down, you can see we enable the Google authentication provider. We created a new instance for it. Then that's provide you two different options. over here, sign in with pop-up, and as well as sign in with redirect. Where it is here, sign in with redirect. So in this case, we are going to use the sign in with the redirect. Open it. Then let's apply the auth, the parameter, the auth parameter which we created for inside the Firebase config. All right. Then the second parameter is you need to supply the provider instance which we created for that. So Google Auth provider instance, that's the instance we provided. So that will return a promise. So we need to handle that promise using the then function. So that will return the result. So let's get that result. Inside this, I'm just going to say console.log result. Anyway, it's not going to print that result because it is sign in with redirect. Once the complete sign in process is completed properly, it will be redirect to the same page back. It will refresh the page. So if there is any issue, dot catch. If there is any issue, all I have to do is to get that error. And I'm just going to say console.log. Some error has been appeared, error, and let's display that error dot message. What kind of error happened? So for this, if there is any issues and all those things, we need to bring some alert notification on all those things. I'll show you how to bring that alert and everything later. So let's make sure if the authentication is working fine or not. Let's get back here and click this option. Right now, nothing is happening. It's still showing Google Auth. So let's refresh the changes. Okay. So we are getting an error as invalid key. The reason why we are getting this, I think probably it's because of this Firebase config app id process.env react app id messaging sender storage bucket project id auth domain API keys. So I think we don't need this double quotes. I think so. Let's remove this double quotes, save these changes, and let's restart our server. Okay, still we are getting an invalid key. What might be the mistake? Come on, think. So why this error is happening? So let's get back to the Firebase project again. Go to the project settings. Let's make sure that we copied everything properly. Everything, I think it seems to be fine. So let me copy this and let's get back here and let me paste this over here, save these changes. So it's compiling, sign in with Google. Okay, it's going to that. So the problem is in our case with the environment variable only. With this only we have the issue. What might be the issue? React underscore app. So we prefixed everything perfectly. So how many? 246. What might be the issue? What is the issue? So where is this environment file? Oh my goodness. So this file, this .env, it is supposed to be in your root directory. So let's click this and drop it outside. Move to your root directory. So it is inside your root directory now. So let's close this and let's restart our server. On start, and let's revert these changes back to the previous like this. save these changes. It's compiling now. Okay, it's working perfectly. So sign in with Google. Yep, it's working perfectly now. So the problem is nothing else. I just kept this env file inside the source folder. That is not supposed to be inside the source folder. That's my bad. Apologize. We should keep that env folder outside the source folder. Good. So now it's working. So let's refresh it. And if I click this, it's taking us to that separate sign in with redirect page. If I click my Gmail, so that will sign in and it will refresh back to the same URL. So everything is working smoothly as it's supposed to be, but we can't see the data, anything else. So how can we get that information? Once the app is being loaded, right? So the app it's getting loaded, right? At that point, I need to get that information. So every time whenever the app is getting loaded, so the app component pushing the user to the home component, right? To this pages. Where is that pages? To the home screen. This is the screen that the user initially, that this is the screen. If that user is successfully authenticated, the app will get loaded and this part will get loaded. So inside this home component only, that we need to get that user authenticated information either here or one second. So it depends on how you are going to use that authenticated user information. For instance, let's say if the user is authenticated, then you are supposed to allow the user to access the home screen. If the user is not authenticated, we are not supposed to allow the user to access the home screen. Then we need to check that part in the app.js itself. But in our case, even if the user is not authenticated, the user still can access our home screen, but it will ask the user to log in to do some stuff with that home screen, right? So if I click the login screen, it will take the user to sign in page and I can sign in over there and I can use my Gmail account and it will be refreshed back and the app will load it. If the user is there and you can see it's still loading and it will be automatically relaunched to the home screen and you have the authenticated user information over there. So we are authenticated successfully. It is working perfectly as it's supposed to be. So now all we have to do is to do the same thing for the GitHub, and we need to create this header component to display that user information, and we need to keep that user information to be accessed globally by using the React query client, right? So let's go one step at a time. Let's fix the GitHub authentication provider and we can move on to that displaying informations. Right, I'll show you how to get that session token to maintain this active user information, everything perfectly. So we don't have to do anything else. Those things maintained by the Firebase itself. All we have to do is to use a proper method to access that information. So let's get back to the authentication part and let's get back to the authentication provider. All we have to do is to you do the same thing how exactly we did for copy this from there and paste it inside this instead of this console log. Sign in with instead of Google Auth, supply the GitHub Auth provider, Git Auth provider. So this will trigger the Git Auth. And let's paste this one more time over here. Sign in with redirect with Google. If anything else, it will take the user to that. So sign in with GitHub. So now it will ask me to authorize. I'll click authorize. So you will be redirect and I'm getting back to the same page. So everything is working smooth as it's supposed to be. No errors, nothing else. Even if you check the inspect elements, if you go to the console, no errors so far over here. Everything is perfectly fine. So the next part is going to do how to access that information and how to keep it accessible for globally. So that's what we are going to do next. All right. So right now, whatever we did over here is every time when the user gets back to the auth URLs, it will again asking the user to log in. So we need to make sure once this URL is loaded, we need to make sure whether this user is already authenticated or not, because if the user is already authenticated, we are not supposed to allow the user to log in again. So to get that information, I need to use the on auth state change in the authentication JSX over here. So, but instead of doing it over here, I'm going to create a custom hook to check that if the user is already authenticated, get that information and put it inside the state management library so we can access it everywhere. So the state management library over here, we are going to use it, which is nothing but the React query. This is the one which you are going to use for our state management library. So before jumping into it, please go ahead and click that and go through their official documentation completely. So you will have a complete idea of what exactly we are going to do and everything. Anyways, I'm going to explain every single part whenever I'm writing the code over here, right? So over here, first let's install that package. So let's say yarn add React query. So please don't make any spelling mistakes. So React query. React query, yarn add React query, and we need the loader animation as well. So we are going to, for that we are going to use the React spinners, this one, React spinners. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. So React spinners, so don't make any spelling mistakes please while copying and pasting. So just add those two packages. So now it will get added successfully. Now what we have to do is we have to configure this query client properly in our app.jsx. So go to the app.jsx and let me bring import. So from the React query, so import from React query. From the React query, I'm going to import two different objects. One is the query client, and another one is query client provider. These two, and of course we need the developer tools to make sure how the state is maintained and everything. So we need that React query dev tools. So let's import that React query dev tools as well as from the React query / dev tools. I'm going to get the React dev query dev tools from there. So now what I need to do is this, it's supposed to be wrapped completely inside the query client provider inside here. So now I need to create a query client. So here I'm just going to say const query client equals to new query client instance. Let's create a new instance and let's apply that instance over here as a client instance, query client. All right, so we wrapped everything inside over here, and I need to bring the React query dev tools also, right? At last I need to bring the React query dev tools, and let's say initial is open as false. Save the changes, and now you should be able to see this flower mark. If you click that, you can see the state, whatever we are created in our query client, it will be maintained over here. So I can able to access it. It is accessible only in the local host. You can see it over here. Anyways, we will remove it by the time when we are deploying it. Okay. In the authentication, let's get back to the authentication. So now over here in the source folder, create a new folder called hooks. We are going to create our own custom hooks. Since for the user, to get the user information, I'm going to say use user.js. That's the hook that I'm going to create. Okay. Now inside this hook, now what we need to do is, so all I'm going to say is const use user equals to enter. And here we need to create the use query. We need to use that hook to create our custom query. So const open it equals to use query open it, which is coming from a React query hook. This is the hook that we are going to use. So this will provide you three different objects. Data is loading, whether that function is loading or not, or is error, whether the function triggering an error or not, and it's giving you the refetch option to trigger the same API again, right? So inside this bracket, enter what is the state that I'm going to create. The state name is going to be the user. That's the state which I'm trying to create. That's the state. Then once the state is being created, I need to call a callback function to call the API or to perform the actions, whatever which I'm trying to do. So here I'm going to create an async function. Inside this function, I'm going to use the try and catch. If there is any error happening, I need to get that error. So if you are getting that any error, so we need to send that error, right? So we need to show an authentication part. So we need to show that notification, alert notification. To show that alert notification, we are going to use this Toastify, React Toastify alert, React Toastify. So this is the one that we are going to use. See, if you show the toast, you can see this is the show alert message that you are going to use. For instance, if you are going to use a dark theme, choose the dark theme, or if you're choosing color, that's the color, and that's the dark theme. See, that's a dark theme. So this is the one that we are going to use for our custom alert notification. So for the time being, let's keep this as it is right now. So don't worry guys, we are jumping here and there, so it might make you to feel a little bit confused. So don't worry, just try to keep following me over here. So we need the alert notification. That's the reason we are trying to add the alert notification now. Yarn add React Toastify. So that will add that specific package. So let's get back to the app.jsx. So inside the app.jsx, we need to bring the this React Toastify npm. Let's get back here. This is the Toastify that we are going to use. So we need to import this CSS. Copy this and import that CSS. Then we need to import these two from here to here. So we don't need this like what to say. Let's keep this. So because we need to make sure whether the toast is working or not. So once this app.jsx is triggered, so I'm just going to call this copy. Let's keep it this. Let's bring the Toastify container over here, right above the React query. Let me bring the React Toastify. So save these changes. Currently no changes over here. Let me get back to the app.jsx, and inside here I'm going to copy this function, or I'm just going to create a new button over here right after here for the time being to make sure whether that toast is working fine or not. On click, I'm going to call a callback function, and I'm going to create the toast object which is coming from this React Toastify. If it is working fine, toast, I'm just going to say toast.success. That's a success that we are going to say. Wow, it's too easy to integrate. Save the changes. Now you should see, where is that button? Okay, we can't see. Click me. Yeah, here we go. This is the button. If I click this, you can see it's showing, wow, it's too easy. That alert notification is working perfectly. It doesn't matter how many times you're clicking, it will keep on create that notification, and it will pops in and pops out smoothly, right? So I need to customize this toast notification. So what I need to do, I always need to keep it on the top right. So let's get back to the app.jsx. Over here, position, it's supposed to be top right. Then the theme, it's going to be dark theme. Save the changes. And now if I click this, we can see it's giving us the dark theme, and it's working as it's supposed to be. So I don't need this toast object over here, and let's go here, and I don't need this button anymore because I make sure that it's working perfectly. So let me delete and revert back to the changes and everything. All right, cool. So now let's get back to the user, right? So over here, if there is anything happening, if there is any specific error is happening, so that means if not error dot message, if not that error dot message dot includes not authenticated, Okay, if that specific error, because that error message will always throws the user is already authenticated, or the email or password is mismatched, or the Gmail error, or some kind of error will always returns, right? If that specific error is not authenticated, if that specific error message contains this part, this particular part, so what I need to do is I need to show toast dot error, like something went wrong, so user needs to try again later. So if that any specific error is returning, so that will be inbuiltly handled by the Firebase itself, right? So we don't have to worry about it, because mostly these two authentication will work perfectly. If the user is not authenticated only, we need to show this error message, right? So here, const user detail. So now I need to fetch this user detail. So I'm going to create a custom function to get that user detail. So this function is not yet created. Then I need to return that user detail. So let's go ahead and create this sub function to create to get that user information. So basically, we need to keep these functions inside the API folder. Under the source folder, let's create a new folder called API. Inside the API folder, let's create a new file called index.js. Okay. So inside this index.js file, so we are going to get that user information. So all I'm going to do is to export const get user details. Let's create this function. And this function is going to be an asynchronous function, or you can, since already over there is asynchronous, we don't need it to keep it over here. So basically, whenever you're trying to call an API function, or when you're trying to call a function which is inside the use query hook, it will always going to return a promise. So we need to handle it in a promise way. So what I need to do is I'm going to return a new promise. I need to return it as a promise from here. So let's return a new promise from here. And let's get the resolve and reject two different parameters over here. Open it. All right. So here I'm going to create a const unsubscribe as a variable. So over here, so I need to get the auth instance from the firebase.config, then on auth state changed. If there is any changes in it, so we will get that user credential. Open it. So if we have the user cred, then the user is already authenticated. So const user data. So we are going to get that user data, which is equals to user cred dot provider data, and we'll get the first index of that provider data array. Then const unsubscribe equals to on snapshot change. So whenever the changes in the user data, so we need to create we need to push that user into our user collections. So that's what we are trying to do over here. So unsubscribe, so on snapshot change. So inside this on snapshot change, for the time being, instead of pushing this user into the collections first, let's make sure whether we are getting the user data or not, right? So what we can do is this is going to be, let's do console.log user data. Let's make sure whether we are getting the user data or not. So just a moment. So if that user is not there, if the user credential is not there, so we need to reject this promise, and let's raise a new error as user is not authenticated. So let me explain this code. So this use user is the custom hook which we are trying to create by using the use query. So basically this use query will return 4 different object data, is loading, is error, and refetch. and this is the state name which I'm trying to create, and that will call an asynchronous function, and I'm using the try and catch to handle those runtime exception. Inside the try, I'm trying to get the user detail which is coming from the API folder index.js from here. So that is going to return the user detail, and I'm going to return that user detail to the front end. So here the place where I'm using this custom hook. So here, this function, it's going to create a new promise which is going to return a new promise, and I'm inside here, I'm having a function called unsubscribe, and it's calling the on auth state changed, a default method which is coming from authentication, and that is going to get the user credential information. If we don't have the user credential information, we are going to reject that promise with the custom string error called user is not authenticated. If we have the user data, we just going to get the data, and we are just trying to log that data. That's what we are trying to do. After this, we need to make sure that listener event to stop the memory leaks, because it will always keep on calling it, so that will leads to the memory leaks. So let's make sure to unsubscribe. Let's make sure to unsubscribe from the listener. We created a listener event to get that data, so we need to make sure that listener event it's being stopped to prevent the memory leaks. So here, let's unsubscribe and call that method. Save these changes, and let's save this changes over here too, right? So now what we need to do is, all we have to do is to we returned it successfully. So let's get back to the user. After this asynchronous function, either we will get the data or we will get the error message, comma, and we need to say refetch on Windows focus is going to be false. All right, and at the end over here of this, I need to return the data is loading is error object and the refetch object, because this is a function. That function is going to return all these data, whatever we have, it's going to return it, and I'm going to export this custom hook in the default name as use user. Save these changes. So I need to use this user inside the authentication.jsx. Let's get back to the authentication.jsx. So over here, const, not there, inside, yeah, there only. Const, let's get that object, use user, which is coming from that hooks folder. So that is going to get the data is loading and is error. So these are the things. Save these changes. Then I need to call const navigate equals to use navigate. Save the changes. On use effect hook, using this use effect hook, I'm going to call if there is any changes in this loading state property, or is any error property, or is any error, I'm going to not error, data. If there is any changes over here, I need to push the if the data is not loading, that means it's already loaded, and if it is having the data, which means the user is already logged in, then what we have to do, we have to push the user to the login screen. Replace, it's going to be so this hook. Now if I click here, you can see the use state hook is created, and inside this we don't have any data so far, because we just did console log. If I go here and if I go to the console, and you can see we have an object, and we have the display year, email, phone number, photo URL, everything, because this is the logged in informations which we are getting it from the user. All right, so now what we have to do is, since we already, which means this user log, inside this get user detail, we created a function, we just logged it. This is the data which is printing over here. So now what we need to do, we need to put this data into the Firebase. Then we need to get that information, then we need to return that information to the user client, the user hook, that will be displayed over here. So this is the part that we need to do. right now. All right, everyone. So you might wonder what exactly happening right now. So you might be so confused. So let me make it clear once again. So let's get back to the authentication JSX. So every time whenever the user trying to log in, right, we need to make sure before going into the authentication screen, we need to make sure whether the user is already logged in or not. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom hook to check that user information, right? Because if the user is authenticated, we need to fetch it only one time and we need to use it globally everywhere. So that's the best way to use it. So that's the reason we are using the React Query client. So React Query client, it helps us to create a custom hook by using the use query parameter over here, use query hook. We can able to create ourselves a custom hook. So I create a user as a custom hook inside the hooks folder, and using that use query, that will gives 4 different objects called data, is loading, is error, and refetch, right? So we created the custom state called user, and inside that custom state we are going to call this API function. So this function inside this API folder, we have a call get user detail. So basically this get user detail, it's going to return a promise. So we are trying to fetch the user credential by using the on auth state change, and we are trying to fetch that information. If that data is there, we are console logging it instead of returning it. If the data is not there, we are rejecting that promise by raising an error as user is not authenticated. So this will be returned and that will be stored in the state. Okay, and that will trigger this like something went wrong, something like that. So this is the user state. So we can use this is loading state, because every time whenever the use React Query client is triggering this function, this use state, this particular is loading property will be true. So we can use this as a property. If that is loading is true, we can load some animation, and if that is false, we can get back to the data. So that's what I'm trying to say over here. So now, since the data is successfully printed in the console, now what we have to do is we have to push this data to the where we need to push this data to our Firebase. That's what we need to do now, right? Since we already enabled that we already enabled that Firestore and everything, all we have to do is to write the code to directly push this user data into our Firebase collection. So I'm inside here, I'm going to create another listener event. So let's say const unsubscribe. It's another event. Unsubscribe is equal to on snapshot change, on snapshot. So basically on snapshot is it's a listener, like a document snapshot. It will constantly listen to that specific collection, whether the data is being modified or deleted or new data is being inserted. So that's the listener we are trying to create over here. Inside this listener, I'm going to create a doc, and I'm going to use the DB object which is coming from the Firebase, which we configured in our Firebase config.js. Then I'm going to create a new collection called users, and I'm going to create user data dot uid. We are going to use that user ID to create it as an ID field for that specific doc. After this doc, I'm going to call a callback function. So I'm going to get that doc information underscore doc. So what we are trying to do over here is we are trying to fetch that user information. If that user is already there in that user collection, we need to fetch that. If that user is not there, then we need to create that user into our collection. So over here from this doc in this user collection, we are trying to fetch this information, right? If that it's having the doc information, if that doc is exists. So here over here, if underscore doc is dot exists, which means that data is already inside. So all I have to say resolve underscore doc that data, we are returning that data. If not, we need to insert. So set doc is a custom method which is coming from the Firestore, and I'm going to use the same doc, copy this, set doc db users user data, and right after that we need to supply the data which you want to insert. We have that user data over here, that object, we are sending that object for this particular ID. If everything is inserted successfully, that will returns the promise. Inside this promise, I'm resolving it and I'm sending the user data back. Save the changes. And now we need to call this unsubscribe method right after here. Return, we need to close that unsubscribe listener event. So unsubscribe, save these changes. Now the unsubscribe event is cleared. Let me explain this code one more time. So we are creating a new promise and we are using the on auth state message. We are creating an unsubscribe event outside, and we are making sure on using the on auth state, we are making sure whether we are getting the user credential or not. If we have the user credential, then we need to make sure whether that logged in user is already registered in our website or not. So we need to make sure whether the data is already inside that collection array or not. So if that collection, so how we are making sure, right? By using the doc property, we are trying to fetch that user information by using that ID. If that ID already exists, then we are sending that data. If not, we are creating a new user for that specific ID, and we are supplying that user data to store it in our collection. Then we are sending it back. So we need to stop this inner listener event, and of course we need to stop the outer listener event to stop the memory leaks. So this is what's happening right now. So save these changes. Now if you refresh this, so it will return back the user to the home screen. The reason is because it's happening. So over here, we return this condition. If it is not loading, which means this is not loading now. And of course, it's having some data in it. So that's the reason it's navigating the user to the home screen. So every time when the user is trying to authenticate himself forcefully through the URL, if I hit enter, so that will take some time and it will push the user back to the home screen. So, but we are not supposed to display this UI. So to do that, to avoid doing that, what we need to do, we need to bring that loader. So that's the reason we install the spinner, right? React spinners to bring that custom loader animations and everything. So to bring that React spinners and everything, so what we can do is, so one second, let's go ahead and create a custom component. Name it as main spinner.jsx or a FCE, and inside here let's export it main spinner. Copy this, paste it, save the changes, close it, and inside here this should occupy the entire screen. So it should take the screen width the screen, and hatch screen, and flex item center, and justify center. And inside here what we are going to do is, I'm going to bring the puff loader. So basically this puff loader is coming from your React spinners. If you search for React spinners, click the React spinners, so, and click the demo page, and there you can see the different kinds of spinner animations over here. So in this case, we are using this one, this puff loader. So for this puff loader, I'm just going to change the color as hash 498 FCD, and the size of this is going to be 80. Save this change. So now all I have to do is to get back to the authentication screen. So right after this hook, so if it is loading, that means if the query client is loading, that means it's trying to fetch the data, and if it's trying to do something, then all I have to do is to return this main spinner from the components screen, from the components where it is. Yeah, main spinner, it's imported in a single line. So now save the changes, and now if I get back to the auth screen, hit enter, you can screen this loader and loading animation, and it will push back the user to the home screen. You will not see that UI. So this is what we try to implement it. And since you can see we have the state, if you click the state, and you can see we have the data in our state. So now whenever I need the user data, all I have to do is to copy this, and I can directly access this user information wherever I need inside the child. Okay, so that's how we will authenticate ourselves and to get that information and to store it in the query client, and as well as we need to make sure whether the data is inserted in the cloud or not. Let's get back to the Firestore database. Go to the Firestore collections, and there we have the user collection, and there we have the ID, and there we have our user information. So we successfully implemented the query client to manage our state, and as well as we successfully saved our user informations in our Firestore collections. How cool is that? And now all we have to do is to create this header component and display that user information and display that sign-in functionality. And that's what we are going to do next. All right then, so since we have the user information, so now all we have to do is to go ahead and create the custom header component. So to do that, all we have to do is to go to the components folder, src components folder, and here I'm going to create a new file called header.jsx rafce, and let's export it from here. Header, and export it in the name as header itself. Save these changes, get back. We don't need this, we don't need this user index.api, don't need, close the unnecessary things. Index.css not necessary, tailwind config, index.js not necessary. Let's keep it simple. Okay, let's get back to we don't need this authentication part also, we already successfully completed. So let's open the home screen.jsx. This is the place that it's getting it will be navigated, because that's the place right now we are. Okay, so now if the user navigated to the home screen, so home screen, now all we have to do is to start writing the customized screen over here. Class name, so it should take the width as complete width, and flex, everything should be in the column direction, and items should be in the center, and it should be from the center. That should keep it in the center. So over here, this header is a fixed header, and the rest of the part, these are things are completely different UI. Okay, so those are complete different routes. For instance, if I click this, you can see this header is still there, but the remaining part is changed over there. So to do that, so we need to bring the header component over here. Then inside the main section, so main section, we need to bring our custom routes. Again, sub custom routes, we need to bring it over here. Cool, right? So let's import the header from the components folder. Let's bring the header, and inside here we have to bring those custom routes and everything. So don't worry about the custom routes. So header component is being successfully loaded. Let's get back to the header.jsx. So inside the header itself, we need to get that information. So inside the header, we need to fetch the user information, authenticated user information. So you can't see the user information over here. So let's go to the authentication screen and copy this line, and let's paste it over here, save it, save the changes, and now you can see we have the user information is displayed over there, right? So because the query client is executed and it's having that user information over there. All right, so now we have that user data right now. And then what I need to do, I need to display this user information just like the same way how I did over here. So let's bring that header first. So what we have to do is let's fix the styles for the header first, then we can start writing the remaining part. So let me delete this. Header. Inside this header, what I need to do, I need to bring the logo, then I need to bring the input field for the search option, then I need to bring the profile section. These are the things I need to do. So here for the header, class name, let's keep this width as full, flex, item center, and justify between, and px it's going to be 4, and py it's going to be 3. From on the large device, px it's going to be 8, and border bottom and border gray 300, border gray 300. Let me enable the word wrap so that you can see the complete screen. Then bg primary color, then z index always should be on the top, and the gap between each object should be 12, and it should be always in the top sticky position, which means if I scroll down, for instance, if I scroll down, I should always see this navigation bar. It should be always stick to the top of that menu. So sticky position should be sticky, and as well as it should be always in the top 0. So save these changes. Now you should be able to see a border line which is looking over there. Then I need to bring the logo. So I'm just going to bring the logo which exactly the same way which we displayed in the footer section. So let's import this link, and as well as let's bring this logo. So that will display the logo over there. Then what I need to do, I need to bring a custom division to display that input section. So class name. So it should take all the available space which is having inside. So then of course it should have the border, and the border gray 300. Then px it's going to be 4, py it's going to be 1, rounded of course it's going to be medium, and then flex item center, justify between, because if you notice here, if I start typing something, it's bringing that X mark and if I click this, it's not displaying over there. Later we need to do that part also, so we need to write the UI styles according to that, right? Then bg gray 200. So inside here I'm going to bring the input tag text placeholder. It's going to be search here, and the value on the on change event we can do that later part. So because we need to create a separate state in the query client to directly push the data whatever we are typing into that state, because every time we are applying the filter, we need to use that filter in the different routes as well as, right? Because this is a different custom route and we are filtering based on the data whatever we are typing over here, because the query client is keep on updating and this component is rendering based on that query client state. So that's the reason we need to directly work with the query client state, that state management library. Okay, so I will explain it briefly when we are going inside the part of filtrations. Right now let's keep it as simple as that. Just directly start writing the class flex 1. It should take the complete available space inside, and I'm fixing the height as 10, and I'm going to keep the transparent bg. Text size it's going to be base, and font of course it's going to be semi bold, and outline is going to be none, and of course border is also going to be none. Save these changes, and that should looks like this. Okay, so okay, rounded, not bottom MD, rounded MD. So that should bring the borders everywhere. So now what we have to do is we have to bring the profile sections. So if the profile section is still loading, we need to bring that animation loading also, right? So that's the reason we added the framer motion. I hope we already added the framer motion. So let's check that. Let's open the package.json, make sure that we added the framer motion. All right, so we already added it. Now what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to bring the animate presence, which is provided by your framer motion itself. So this animate presence inside, we need to write the animations inside this animate presence, because that helps us to insert and exit the animations smoothly, like ease in and ease out. So that's the purpose. So if the user loading is, if still the query client is loading to fetch the user data, which means it's loading, so I need to bring that puff loader animations, puff loader, then color, of course it's going to use the same color 498 FCD. That's a custom color which I'm using. So then size is going to be 40. Then if it is not loading, which means it's having some data in it, so I'm going to bring the react.fragment inside this. I need to bring that if that is having some data and all those things, I need to display that data. So I'm going to create a paragraph tag and I'm going to simply display it as a user, because the user data is there, then we are displaying the data. So if I refresh this, you can see it's loading that puff animation, which means it's trying to fetch that user information. So it's loading. If I can show you here, see, it's loading there. So inside here, I need to make sure whether the data is there, we need to display the user information. If the data is not there, we need to display that login button. So over here, if the data is there, then I need to create motion.div. So basically this motion is a package which is coming from the framer motion, which helps us to write the animation. So import that as well. If not, I need to display a button which is going to resembles a button, um, like what is it? We need to push that user to the login screen, right? So I need to bring the link from the React router DOM, and that is going to link the user to the auth screen. So make sure that's the screen name. Yes, auth screen URL route auth. Then, and inside here I'm going to have a button, motion dot button, and inside this button I'm going to simply display the text as login, save these changes. So this button is not going to display anyway right now. Later we can do the customizations and everything, because we do have the data. So I need to bring the data over here. So if we have the data, so I need to display that image over here, right? So before that I'm going to write the class name for this. So class name, let's say I think we don't need any styles for this division. Okay, let's keep this division as an empty. That is one tricky part over here. What I'm trying to say is, so not every single over here user will have the profile URL. Some user, they don't have the profile URL. In that case, we need to display the very first letter of their email over there. So every time when you're trying to display an image, we need to check that if the data dot photo URL, if the user have the photo URL, then I need to display a division. I need to display a division. If not, I need to display another division. Save the changes. So here, let's bring the class name. If the user have the image URL, so let's bring the width as 12, height as 12, and rounded MD, relative, and flex, item center, justify center. So inside here, now we have to bring the image tag. So let's bring the image tag over here. All right, so inside the source, now let's delete this. Okay, so we need to bring that the photo URL of that user. So let's say data colon photo URL. Let's keep that photo URL in the source, and of course we need to add the referrer policy also, referrer policy, and let's keep that referrer policy as no referrer. And let's add some styles for this class name, which is going to use the width full, hatch full, and object cover, and rounded MD. So that should display the image over there. How cool is that? If the user is not there, if the user image is not there, so that is going to display this particular division, right? And the BG, I'm going to keep it as BG blue 700. So if that user is not there, so of course it's going to display this particular section, right? BG blue 700, and let's add some shadow medium. So let's say give a wrong input over here. So it is supposed to display the, okay, there is some mistake over here in the width hyphen, here also hyphen. So now we should able to see that width, and inside here I need to display that, because I forcefully changed this we don't have this object, so that's the reason we are able to see that. So here what I need to do is I need to bring that what to say I need to bring that the very first letter of that particular logged in user. So let's create a paragraph tag. So here I'm just going to say data dot display name. So let's get that display name, and let's use the 0. Either you can use their email or you can use their Gmail, that display name. In this case, sometimes you might not also have the display name as well. So let's use the email itself. So save the changes. Now that should display the first letter over there. So let's bring the class name and let's add text LG and text white. So you can able to see the text over there. Cool, right? So for this division, let's add the cursor as a pointer. Cursor pointer for both. Now you should able to see the cursor over here. So let's get back to this, say the changes. So that should display the image. So this is that division, right? Inside this division, now what we need to do is, all we have to do is to we have to bring that this is that division. So for this division, what we have to do is, so we need to keep this division. This is the division that we are worrying about, right? So this is getting more and more trickier now. Okay. So now what we are trying to do here is we have to display this drop down menu, right? We have to display that drop down menu. So to bring that drop down menu, what I need to do is, for this particular division, I'm just going to make this position as a relative position, relative. So then, and inside here, I'm going to bring that drop down menu. So that's what we are trying to do here. So let's create one more division over here and let's keep that division as an absolute position, absolute. And what else we have to do? And let's add some padding for it. Px, it's going to be 4, py, it's going to be 3, and rounded md, and background bg, it's going to be white, absolute, and it should be in the right side. And from the top, I'm going to bring it 10, and everything should be flex column, item center, and justify everything in the starting position. And gap should be 3, and width, of course, it's going to be 64. And from the padding top, I'm going to increase a little bit, 12. So this is how it should looks like. And I think we need to push further down. 16, I think it's enough. Yep, 16 is too much. 14. Yep, 14 is perfect. Even if the photo URL is not there, yep, that is supposed to be displayed over there. Cool, right? So inside here, now what we need to do, if the photo URL is there, we need to display the photo URL. If not, we need to display that text option. So inside this drop down option, so here, so let's change this to motion division, motion.div, and let's wrap this inside the animate presence, save the changes. Cool, that's looking fine. All right, so now what we have to do is we have to bring the content exactly looking like this inside that particular menu. So that's what we are trying to do next. All right, so now what we have to do is to inside this division, so let's do the same stuff. I'm just going to copy the same thing from here and I'm going to paste it over here, save these changes. Now it should display that image, but instead of like that, I'm going to increase this to 20. Yeah, that is perfectly fine. And let's increase it over here to 20. So then we need to display 20, and this is supposed to be not rounded MD, that is supposed to be full. That is supposed to be full, something like this. Then underneath it, we need to display this user email, not user email. We need to display their display name if they do have the display name. So if they do have the data dot display name, then I need to display this paragraph tag. So that displays that paragraph tag where it is flex column. This is supposed to be flex column. So it's displaying over there. So we are not supposed to display that information over there because this is common for both these things. This is the place where that it's getting ended, and we need to display it over here. And the text color is going to be txt dot text, like that. So even if that photo URL is not there, that is going to display their first name, and this text size is going to be 3x, like this. If the photo URL is there, it's going to display the image and it's going to display the name. So this is the place it's getting entered, and this is the place where we are displaying that image. Right after here, now what we need to do, we need to display that menu functions. So all we have to bring that menus options, and here let's create a div class name. So width, of course, it's going to be full, and the flex, of course, it's going to be column direction. Item, everything should be in the starting. Flex gap is going to be 8, and padding top is going to be 6. And inside here, I'm going to bring the link tag, and inside this link tag, I'm going to say my account, copy and paste it, and add new template, add new template, and let's copy and save the changes. So for this class name, it's going to be text txt text txt light, but on hover I'm going to change the text txt dot. Save the changes, and I'm going to use text base size, right? That's the base size that we are going to use. And right after here, we need to use the to property. So to, we don't have any account, any URL, custom URL that we have create. So this should take the user to the profile route, and this should take the user to the template slash create route. Okay, template slash create route. And of course, we need to make sure this should not bring the white space. So what we have to do over here, white space, no wrap, save changes. So that should not bring it to the next line. All right. So this add new template should not be displayed for every single user. Later we need to customize this, and because I will, in the environment folder, I will create a custom IDs and everything. If that ID, if the user ID is inside that ID, we need to bring this, we need to display this for that user. Otherwise, he's not an admin, so he can't able to add that. So all we have to do is to implement the sign out option. So right out after this link tag, I'm going to bring a division. For this division is going to have a class name with, of course, it's going to be full, and the px it's going to be 2, and px it's going to be 2, and py it's going to be 2, and border top and border gray 300, and flex item center justify between and group group. Inside here, I'm going to bring a text called sign out, and I'm going to bring one logout for exit. Okay, so let's import that icon manually. Import from React icons hi to here hi log out. Okay, it's not inside there, then it's supposed to be inside here. Yeah, here it is. Hi log out. We need to bring it over here. Hi log out. Class name. So group class name. So group over text dot txt text light. By default it should be light. We have to do the same stuff for this paragraph, something like this. So you can see that. Then for this we need to add the cursor pointer. Save these changes. So everything is looking good. So we need to make sure this menu should display only if that state is active on all those things. Before that, let's implement the let's implement that. Let's fix that, and then let's come over here. So this is that animation, right? This is that the menu division. This is the menu division, the complete menu division. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a drop down menu. If that menu is active, I need to display this menu. So let's create a state over here. So use state snippet is menu. By default it's going to be false. So here cut this entire division because I minimized it. So minimize it, then cut it properly. And here if is menu, then only we need to display this. Save these changes. So use state is not imported, so let's import it properly. Import it. Now you will not able to see that. So where the place that we are trying to bring that, so this is the place that we are trying to bring that for this division. So on mouse on click or mouse enter. So whenever how this is created on click. Okay, so on click what I need to do is I need to set that field as true. On click callback function, set is menu as true, or okay, it should be a toggle option, right? Not is menu. If it is true, make it false. If it is false, make it true, something like that. So copy this. So now if I click this, it will be displayed. If I click it, it will be gone. So just like the same stuff, what I need to do is on leave, whenever I leave that menu function over here on mouse leave, I need to call the same thing. I need to call the same subfunction false. I need to make this as false. So that means when I come inside, if I go out, that should be immediately it should be immediately move out. So like that. See, but the animation is not looking good. So what I need to do is I need to bring the animation over here. So to bring that, what I'm going to do is for this I'm going to add the initial animation. Initial the opacity it's going to be 0, and then animate it's going to be opacity it's going to be 1, and on exit opacity it's going to be 0. Save the changes. Now you can see it's coming in and going out slowly. So if you want to slide it into, if you want to make it like a little bit slide in and slide out, so let's make this scale. Initially the scale level is going to be 7. On animated stage it's going to be 1, and while exiting also the scale level, it's going to be 7.7. So after y, it's going to be initially the y is going to be 0. So slide up menu, right? So initially the y position is going to be a little bit further down, so 20 like this. So it looks like it's coming from down like this. So the scale, I think we don't need the scale animation, that is not looking that much good. So let's delete the scale animation, which is not necessary. So now this should looks fine. That's looking fine. But what we have to do is we have to maintain all these animations separately. So I'm going to create a new folder called animations. And inside this animation, I'm going to create an index.js. And let me copy this from here. And let's create an animation, export const slide up menu. Let's bring it slide up down menu or something equals to, that's the animation name that we're trying to do. Let's bring it over here. Let's customize this. Use the multi-cursor editor to delete these equal sign and extra bracket and add comma over there. And we need to add the colon, otherwise it will throw us an error. Add the colon over here. All right, so now it's resolved. Then open the spread operator to bring all those objects over here. So slide up down, let's import it, and there we go. Now you will able to see the exact same option over there, right? How cool is that? It's working perfectly as supposed to be. Now all we have to do is to add the sign out option. So for that sign out, what I'm going to do is, this is the place where we are calling that. So on click, I'm going to call sign out user method. Copy this. Let's we need to bring that sign out user method. So either right after here. So let's create that const sign out user method. Okay, and let's keep this function as async. And over here, await auth dot sign out, open it dot, then if it is successfully signed out, then I need to get a callback function. I need to update that in the query client also. So you should get the query client object. So we need to get the query client object. So const query client, because we need to update the state as well as in our query, right? So query client equal to use query. We can't again and again create the query client, so better use the use query client hook to access the query client which we created initially. Using that, query client dot set query data. What is the state name? This is the state name, user. I'm going to make the user as null. Save the changes. So oops, not this, null. Save the changes. All right, so now if I click this, if I click sign out, it's showing it as a login. And if you check the user, you can see it's showing as null. And now if you try to get back to the login, we can able to see that UI. Everything, it makes sense now, right? So now if I need to customize this login button, because that is looking so awkward right now. And I need to add some animations also for this, because it is coming in and going out, right? So we need to bring some fade in and fade out animations. So we need to do the same stuff for that profile sections also, because if the data is there, this is the place where we are displaying that data over here, right? This is the place where we are displaying that data. So here for both of these two, I need to bring the animation. So initial equals to opacity 0 and animate opacity, it's equals to 1. and on exit opacity is equal to 0. So let's cut it from here. Let's go here and export const fade in out with opacity. Let's change all these things. Say the changes, copy this from here and use the spread operator to import this and do the same stuff for here also. All right, so let's hide this. And let's start writing the styles for this button. Class name, and the type should be a button. Okay, let's add it. And for this class name, px it's going to be 4, py it's going to be 2, and rounded it's going to be medium. And of course we need some border, and the border gray color it's going to be 300, and then bg gray color it's going to be 200. And hover, when I'm hover, I'm going to bring a shadow, and on active I'm going to make the scale level as 95, and the duration it's going to be 50, and save the change. That's how it looks. How cool is that? If I click this, I can go here, I can sign in with Google, so that will ask me to choose an account. So I'm getting back over here, it's refreshing, and the user will redirect to the home screen. I can able to see the user informations. I can click sign out, I can go log in again, sign in with Google. In this case right now I'm going to use this, which doesn't have the profile URL, so the user will be redirected to there, and you can see it's displaying the text, and here also it's displaying the text, which means we successfully fetched the user informations and we displayed it over here. So far the animations and the use query client, everything is working fine. So we successfully completed the authentication. So the next part which we have to display is the home screen customizations, or we can move on to the admin privileges where we can able to create the new templates and everything. So that's what we are going to do next. All right, so this is the part 1 of this resident builder app. So I hope you guys understood, or you have some idea about the concept whatever we discussed about so far now. So I hope you guys to grab some information from this video. So even if you're having any questions or anything about the concepts whatever we discussed so far, so drop the questions in your comment sections. I will definitely reply back. So if you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section. So the next part will be uploaded soon. Thank you.